Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Goals Do Come True with me, Doug Bennett, the Goals Guy. Today, I am joined by Jason Yarusi, and he's from across the pond. He's like a bit big in real estate, and when I say big, I mean a big. He's got over 3,000 units that he looks after, and we're going to delve into that and how he started it, how goals fit into what he does, but my team have told me not to preamble too much and just launch straight into it. So here we go. Jason, thanks for joining me from Tennessee.
Tennessee. That is correct. Great to be here.
Right. So goals. This is the Goals Do Come True podcast. So I'm reckoning that you must have set quite a few goals to have that level of real estate that you're looking after. But tell us a little bit more about you. You've got your own podcast and you're a coach and a keynote speaker and stuff. So over to you. Tell us what the world needs to know about you.
Well, my journey has been very non-traditional, at least for where I am, is that I started out having no goals, right? And so I guess a goal of having no goals was my first journey, right? So left college really just with a lack of direction. I went there and I chose my major because I had a girlfriend at the time, and her mom was like, "You're good at numbers. Why don't you do business?" And that was my whole direction of choosing a major. So went in, had a minor in finance. I left college without wanting to move into finance. And so I moved into New York City and started working in bars and restaurants. So I went from my business degree into, a bartender. Did that for a number of years. And of course, I was just angry because I wasn't getting any results, right? So I wasn't making any money. I wasn't, having a relationship I want. I wasn't living in a good place. I wasn't able to do things. And I just constantly was without, right? So I was blaming everything else. I was constantly pointing the finger outwards of just everything else was the reason I didn't have it. The way I was brought up, my college, my parents, my relationship, everything but me was the problem. Until one night, angry at the world because I was working till, 3, 4 in the morning, I left work and got on my bicycle. And instead of just going around a bike path that leads you on a path around Manhattan, around New York City, angry, just wanted to get home and just sulk in my miserable ways, I started riding across Manhattan. I'd done it before, ran all the way across the island and made a right onto 2nd Avenue. And out of nowhere, a flashlight came up and I got hit by a car and thrown into the air. And next thing I know, I wake up, with my shoulder popped out, I'm all bloody, just getting pulled off the street as all of the traffic started to go on the street. Get taken to the hospital, and in the hospital, stitched me up, put a pin in my wrist, a couple other things. And all I can think about was, man, I need to get back to working at the bar so I can make rent. And I had this pause where I had this moment of clarity where I was like, okay, that is the craziest thought you are having, that you've just been complaining, hating your life, hating the world, hating everything you're doing, not want to be at your job, none of this. You get hit by a car. Now here you are in the hospital. All you can think about is now you want to get back to this job you hate. So what are you doing? And it was that moment of reflection where I had to just look at myself and say, you are putting yourself in bad places, bad spots, having bad decisions, and you're getting bad results. And now you want to go back and do that same thing. And now you can't be angry if you're going to get bad results. So I can't magically say that overnight everything changed. But over the next course of the couple days, couple weeks, I started to be self-aware and make decisions that started to give me some positive momentum for once. So instead of, going and drinking after work and just, doing bad things, I started to eliminate that. I started to get up at a useful time in the morning. I started to have, a workout plan, started to get myself back into a momentum of workout. Then lo and behold, that little positivity I started putting in there started to go not only through me, through my relationships, it started to give me some momentum, some more thought. My mind started working again instead of just going through this conundrum of just the same thing each and every day. So I went from being a bartender to then opening a bar, opening a restaurant. I opened and sold a brewery actually in New York City at a time. And I did that until a big hurricane happened on the East Coast, Hurricane Sandy. And then my dad had a small construction company, and his company exploded because he did a lot of work that was on flooding. So my little brother, who was working with me in the city, and my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, we moved out to New York City, and I helped dad basically 10x his business over the course of 6 years. So we did that. But what came about is that as, my wife was pregnant with our first child, we wanted to find a way to just get back control of our time, right? We were doing all these jobs, transactional jobs from the bar world, the restaurant world, now the construction world, where I had to go do some tasks to get paid. And if it rained out or say I couldn't go to work or, miss this thing, there's no money. So I kept asking that question, like, what is my life meant to do? What can I do out there that can give me some purpose, but also allow me to create a life that I can control? And it led me down the path to real estate. And we started doing some flipping of homes. And that, again, was transactional. And then one day we were listening to a podcast where someone was buying apartment communities. And that was that light bulb moment where I was like, I get it. And we went all in, learning the process to be able to buy apartment communities, large apartment communities where sometimes there's 50 tenants to a couple hundred tenants who will live in these apartment communities. And we sold and stopped all the flipping we were doing, dove all in and started to buy apartment communities basically 1,000 miles away from where I was living in New Jersey, in Kentucky. And that first building, we put a process together where we brought the building, we made it a better place to live by really just improving all of the communications. And next thing you know, it allowed us to really have a great result, to buy another one and another one. And that was the first of about 30 so transactions we've now brought apartment complexes in the southeast of the United States.
Wow. But you went where the money was, or where, you could buy something effectively priced.
Correct. Correct.
I never like to use cheap. I prefer to use the term effectively priced. Right. Because it just makes it sound nicer, I think. But I can see that. So you're going big, really. Buying a huge, technically a huge apartment block, right?
Correct.
Wow. And so how did you fund those things?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And the reason we went big is because I started to learn that, big doesn't always mean riskier. It means that there's more opportunity for an investment to be successful, right? I had very small restaurants where there was like a 10-seat restaurant, and I had restaurants that could have 100 people. And if I have a 10-seat restaurant, if it's dinner time, I can only turn 10 seats so many times. So I need to make sure I can maximize every check. There's all these different things that have to work in my favor for the business to be successful. There's more opportunities for economies of scale in a larger restaurant. Well, the same thing happens with a bigger property. Say I have a building and it has 4 apartment units in there. Right? Well, if there's 2 vacant units, I'm 50% occupied. So I need those other 2 units to be able to cover all the expenses, cover the mortgage, be able to do all the things to make it happen, right? Well, if a 100-unit building and I have 2 vacant units, I still have 98 income producing units. And so each time I do something, it's magnified by the results of just how many units there are. It also gets better financing from banks here because it's treated as a safer investment. Because instead of having only 4 tenants that could pay the mortgage, now I have 100 tenants, right? The businesses, institutions, they look at it in a more favorable environment because you can do more things for the investment to win. So we put bank financing on a portion of it. About 60 to 70% of it will come from a bank for the financing. And then the other percentage will come from investors. And so we'll raise capital from a series of investors who are mainly friends and family investors. And they'll come in there and work with us as being limited partners or passive investors while we run the operations of the building.
I like that. I don't know if we have that many sort of apartments that size in the UK, but I'm part of a group of people, and there are a lot of creative stuff going on. Phrases that I've been a mortgage broker for 30 years, and or nearly 40 years now, goodness sake. And some of these terms that they're using don't mean anything to me. It's like rent to rent. What does rent to rent mean? And apparently you can rent a place off somebody and then rent it, change the structure of it and rent it out and make some money. And it's just like, really? It doesn't seem right. But yeah, and I can see the sense of, because you think, wow, crikey, how much is a big apartment block? How do you, finance the 30 to 40%? And yeah, it makes sense to bring other people in and spread the risk there and spread the risk, as you say, amongst the apartments. So I do like that as an idea. So,
It gives people the opportunity to partake in real estate without having to put up the lion's share. So the investors that can come in, instead of, having to put up a couple $100,000, a couple $1 million to be able to fund the entire thing themselves to buy it and then have to manage it, they can come get the benefits of real estate, right? From the, everything from the cash flow to the depreciation tax advantages by maybe investing $50,000 or $100,000. And so it allows them to keep their lion's share of their investment most of the time, whether it's into their business or stocks or bonds, but then still have some allocation of real estate. So most investors like to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah, I can see that. It's the diversification associated with that. And that makes an awful lot of sense. And we talk about multiple streams of income and, spreading the risk and that. Yeah, so I like that. I like that idea. So, goals. Do you have any?
I have goals in different aspects of my life, right? So goals for the real estate investment is that we have a goal of finding one opportunity per quarter, right? So every 3 months we do goals, and that leads us that we have to basically find so many leads so we can underwrite so many deals, so we can make so many offers, right? Because I can't control the goal of getting a deal, right? So the goal of getting a deal, I can't control it, but I can control the inputs of what we do, right? And so I run a lot, so I have fitness goals, right, in terms of races that I set up to do a year, right? And then also we have goals within the family. So I have 3 little kids, 9, 7, and 5, right? And so we have goals within my wife and herself just to raise them accordingly, right? And so to give them the guidance so they can make good decisions. So we treat goals together, right? Because they all lead together, right? Because the fitness allows me to have more time with the family, right? Where the business gives us the opportunity to trim back to have the choice of how we live our life. So they all tie together, although they're separate channels on how those goals are put together.
Okay. I think you have a goal of getting up at 4:32 a.m. I saw that somewhere. 4:32.
That was a big change. Yeah.
But but 32. That's the thing, that's like 4:32. What's that all about?
Give you the rundown of why that came about, because many times we just set it as like the hour, like 5 o'clock. So 5 o'clock becomes 5:05, or I'll get up at 4:30, it becomes 4:40, right? You hit the snooze button, or at 6 o'clock and becomes 6, 7, 6:10. Just doesn't matter, right? But no one's ever hit the snooze button and then gotten up 10 minutes later and just been like, I feel so much better because I hit that snooze button, right? When you get up, you get up. And so I had to get myself back, because that first choice, to discipline myself to that first choice, is most important for me. So 4:32, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So when that 4:32 goes, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, I just stand up. And I just get up out of bed, have a glass of water, and just start going through the progression of my day. Because once you're up, right? Like most people don't get up and like go start their day and be like, yeah, I'm gonna go back to bed, right? 99% of the time, it's just that first moment here that you have to make the choice to get up. And when you do that, you're good. You might be a little tired, you might be apart, but you're now on your journey and you're ahead of 99% of the other people who are now hitting that snooze button or just waiting those parts. But that time is most formative because it's usually the quietest, right? It's usually the point where you have the cleanest space. It's usually the point where you can have clear decisions and a clear mind. Because many times we get up and usually we're a couple minutes late because we're trying to just get every last minute to sleep there. And then the day starts in chaotic fashion. And I've already talked about what my life looked like in chaos, right? So now I can't lead back into a life of chaos, because typically, you have kids, right? But you get up, and if I wanted to get up, now my kids are up already, right? It's not like I have time for myself, right? It's now I got to get them ready, get them out the door. And then everybody's rushed, everybody's pushed. They might not eat right. I might not be able to have my morning. Then everything's terse in that part. We jump in the car, we get stuck in traffic. We're late getting to school. We're late for work, and everything is just one fire after the next. And you get to the end of the day and you're like, what just happened? I'm never going to do that again. And then the next day you do the same thing. And then you're like, why am I not getting good results? And then you look back and you're like, oh, I get it. Because everything is just reactive. I have no time to set my goals and actually implement my goals, because all I'm doing is getting up and reacting to everything that's happening through the day. And you can either continue that path or just stop, take a clean look at what you're doing, and start to unbreak some of those habits. Now, are they all going to magically change the next day? No, but you can start to remove some of those things. You get up and change. I mean, think about anything. If you get up 5 minutes earlier, just do what you said. Okay, cool. You did that. At least you can look back today, but like, I got up when I said I got up. But most of the time we get up and it is just fire after fire. And we'll go on, people will do that for years, decades, and just be like, oh, don't know why I'm not getting what I want. It's because we're just setting ourselves up for failure.
I like that. 4, 3, 2, 1, go. I love it. That is so clever. So clever. So do you wake the rest of the people up, or is it like a little tiny on your wrist,
So I get up, I'll have a glass of water, I'll go, and I've actually pushed about 8 years ago, I started doing meditation and just gave myself a moment apart. Then I'll go work out. And by that time, my wife's getting up and doing things, and I can now come back in with a clean mind. The kids are getting up, I can have some time with them, but she can have her time. And then we go and we can, together start tackling the day together. So I do that because, as once the kids are up, they're up, right? There's no like, hey, okay, you might just give me 10 minutes. It's like, okay, let's go. It's not happening. So I've had to beat the clock, and that's where, I found 6:30 didn't work, 5, I had to pick my time. And so there's that, for anybody out there, it doesn't have to be 4:32. It can be a moment of time, say it was 5:43 or it's 5:18, whatever it is, right? That you just get up, and it's more important that you get up and just do what you said you're going to do. Because we go through school, we go through most of life is that we have all these people around us. Get in line, oh, there's the bell, get your backpack, or, oh, you got to be on work, right? But no one's watching us to lead us to our goals, right? You want to have goals. Well, okay, you got to have goals, but then you have to implement and do the actions to get to the goals.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I do see that. I could see myself getting up at 9 minutes past 10. So sometimes, but I had a serious accident last year, and it sort of put me out of kilter and sort of lots of little bits and pieces. I mean, I came off my motorbike at 95 miles an hour. And I'm just pleased to be alive. So sometimes if I'm feeling a bit tired, I think, do you know what? Your body's probably still healing a little bit in there, because I smashed ribs and shoulder blades and all manner of stuff. So I cut myself some slack. But also, I'm 61, so,
Well, you've also created a life where you can choose, right? Because many times people will have an accident, they just have to be forced to go back because they haven't set them up, to be able to choose that, right? And you do have to listen to your body, right? There's a certain point that you just go, but you go because then there's things in your day like you do when most of the time, like we just constantly give ourselves days off, right? And every day is a day off, right? But you're doing it, and in the days now that you don't, your body's like, listen, like I need a moment. You're like, okay, cool. You take the moment because you're doing the work. But where I was failing was that it was always a day off. Tomorrow's always a better day, right? And then the next day is always a better day, right? And that's how most of the days go. Is everybody just waits for like the perfect day, but there's no perfect day. And when there's a perfect day, you're gonna look for a more perfect day, right? To get started. It just start going, and then like anything, like for me working out, like life events come up, right? Something, whatever, like think about anything, like something comes up. We have a flood in the house, right? Like, well, okay, I got to go deal with that. Like that might disturb like my workout in the morning or something like that. Like there's things that are going to come in the way without you having to get in the way, but we're getting in the way most of the time. And then saying, oh, well, I'm not getting the results.
Yeah. So you've got to get out of your own way sometimes.
Always.
So always, not sometimes. Yeah. Always, we've got to get out of our own way.
Yeah.
Okay. So these goals of yours, are they written down somewhere? Are they on a whiteboard? Are they on an app on the phone? How do you put them together? And also your kids. I mean, are they get, because you're a coach as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you instill goals and goal setting in them, or are they still a little bit young for that sort of thing?
We do. What I've been working with them is that, my wife and I grew up, and our parents tried, but they were facing their own points. I think of myself at my age, and like I would be my parents' age when they're raising me, and I'm like, man, like my parents, like, God bless them for like just like going through, because like, as little kids, like you don't realize your parents are like facing their own things too, right? So as I look at my kids, what I was getting was just negativity, not purposeful, but just my parents were facing tough things, right? And so there was just a lot of negativity built in that, and like, kids are sponges, right? So what we've really worked on is just, starting the day with positivity, affirmation, just giving the kids positive thoughts, because as they're in schooling now, they're in a great school. But in that fact, I can start to see some of the impressions that they'll get from maybe some of their classmates. Like, oh, well, I'm not good at this. Like something you've never tried, right? Like these things that ultimately they're choosing to get this impression because of just something they heard from somebody else, right? They're very impressionable. And so for us, for our kids, we're more just trying to engage them in learning to think in a way that's opportunistic and not just a point that I ultimately can't, right? And so we're constantly, that's a constant change. It could be a save point. For ourselves, we create a vision board, and, we create a vision board every year. And what I like about that is that I see a lot of the goals we'll hit, but I'll also see that sometimes we'll learn from that vision board of goals that we actually don't want. And sometimes you have to get a goal on your board and start going after it to realize that, like, you know what? That's not my goal. I don't want that goal. And it'll allow you to pivot accordingly. Because I found that many times we're living, especially with the world of like social media, sometimes we're living other people's goals. Mm. Oh, that looks good, right? Oh, I must want to live on a house on the beach, or I must want to, go have this body, or I must want to have, this business because I see someone else doing it, right? And you're like, oh, that must be my goal. And so at times we'll enlist in our lives goals that aren't really meaningful goals because we're living someone else's goals. And so what I've learned over time is just to truly understand why I want to go, right? Like what is this goal going to be accomplished? I hear it a lot when we're coaching people is that, the big talk will be, I want to make X amount of dollars. So I want to make $1 million. And you'll be like, okay, well, why? And they'll think about it and think about it some more. They don't really have an answer. They just picked a number. Right. And that magical number, like if they got $1 million ultimately, then they would be happy. They assume. Right. But if we start to dive into it and we start to say, OK, let's really look at, what you spend, what you do, like what you want to do. It might be that they need to make like $87,000 and they can have the life they want based on their choices, because we just got back to it. Like a huge point to create some fictional goal that has no value, no meaning to them. But we get back to like what they actually want to do in their life. And it's like, whoa, OK. Now I can create action steps to get there. But many times we pick just some arbitrary number that we assume life gets better at. So the big important thing for me is to set goals with understanding that goals are just the little mile markers, right, that you get to as you go. It's not the stopping point. And for many years, I set goals as if when I get here, then life will be perfect, as if life stopped and it didn't go on the next day. And the more I do that, the more I've learned that the opportunity is in setting a goal, but each time I set the right goal, I surpass the goal because it's something that I've now hardened my mind and improved my mind to be ready for something so far past it, right? So to the goal of just buying an apartment complex, we've brought, 30 plus of them now, right? So that was the first goal. But then once you brought the first one, then you were able to put, steam on it, right? Put fuel into the fire, and it started to really transcend, right? So monetary goals, physical goals, we've surpassed them because we've started to create goals that were meaningful for us. So we do set the vision board with the understanding that we're going to go after it. But at times we have to be open to be versatile, to adapt, to truly find what the goal is ahead. Because it's important to have a goal, but it's also important to understand when the goal needs to change to get you better on the path to where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the phrase is, if you're climbing the ladder of success, make sure it's resting against the right building.
I like it. Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Because we can get carried away with stuff, and just go down totally wrong direction. And I like the fact that, it's got to be your goal too. We have so many of other people's goals thrust upon us. And you should be doing this and you should be doing that. So I like that. Now, have you got any, your starting points of nuggets that you share with your sort of clients? So if you're going, right, well, here's a golden nugget. This is something everybody needs to know. And if it can be goals based, that would be awesome. But, over to you.
I like for a point here of starting with the goal and then building backwards, but then finding the first step. The first step is the hardest thing to do. But once you do the first step, typically you'll have 4 results. Excuse me. So as you take that first step, it's either going to be absolutely in the wrong direction. And you're like, okay, don't do that again. Right. So there's the lesson. Right. Or the first step is you take a step and it's kind of somewhere in a general direction. It's somewhere positive, and you're like, okay, what is the lesson learned to here? What do I need to do to adapt and pivot to the right direction? Third step is you're absolutely in the right way, right? Now, okay, take more steps. Let's go, right? Or the fourth is you never take the step. But understanding that you have to take that first step, that leads you to all the answers. Because in my life, I was constantly seeking the answer, right? I was like, I just need to get the answer. But what I uncovered is it was never the answer that I was off on. It was always the question. When I learned how to ask the right question, what happens? The answer shows up. But all the time, I'm looking for the answer without actually knowing the question. So of course, I'm not getting the answers I want because I'm not asking the right question. And usually the right question to the right person gets you everything you need in life. So when you're choosing a goal, understand that the goal is out there, right? The straight line path is not going to exist. You need to take one step to elicit the next step because you don't know where that next step's going to be. It could be left, right, forward, backwards, up, down, everything in the middle. But that first step is everything. And that's what the step you have to take.
And getting up at 4:32 helps with that.
It sure does. Get you the opportunity to have more steps if you have time.
Excellent. So, how can people get hold of you? I'm not going to bring this to a close, but I just thought I'd throw in the middle. How can people get hold of you if they want to have a chat about your stuff?
Sure. So my website, jasonyarusi.com, you can find all about me. I also have the Live 100 podcast. It's I do short tidbits, less than 10 minutes, where I dive into just the moments of the day. So some lessons or some paths or some things that I've learned along my journey, so you can go out there and take advantage of living the life that you deserve to live.
And that's Live 100 podcast.
Correct.
We'll make sure it's in the show notes anyway. So, how often do you do that?
That's twice a week. It comes out on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay. And give us one recent one that you've done.
Lessons on failure. Lessons on failure. And that's one that will be coming out shortly. And failures are just so interesting, right? Because we take failure as us, right? Not a moment, right? And you think about, like many times our day can be ruined by one 30-second thing where we failed when it's just an event that happened. But now the other whole day is ruined, right? So we have now 1,400, 10 seconds, whatever it is that's left for the day right there is ruined because of just this 30-second moment. And if we look at it, that within the failure, there's the opportunity that there's a lesson forward, right? And you think about anybody like sports, life, writers. You think of anybody who's had success. There's been some level of failure that they've learned through to get them to where they want. And you have to have failure. But most of us, we never want to actually try anything because we're so worried of failing. But if you think about that, right, we don't want to fail that we'll never try, right? So we're failing on actually ever trying, right? So we're ultimately failing because we're actually not taking the action to start the journey. But you have to fail. But the failure is an event. It's not a defining moment. It's something that happens upon you that you'll learn through, but you have to embrace the failure, understand that, no, we don't want you to constantly fail. But there's going to be times when the failure is going to come, expect it or not, right? And it's going to shock you, surprise you. But within that, you will grow through the failure because the failures you have today will not be the failures you have in 5 years. You won't even remember the failure today. And the new things like today's hard is going to be so little. It's going to be like a pebble where, where it looks like a mountain and it looks like Mount Everest, but today in 5 years, it's going to be a pebble and you'll be onto a new Mount Everest at that point. But we do have to embrace it, learn through it, persevere to it, and have the fortitude to continue to carry it forward, because that is what gets you the life that you can and will have.
I like that. It's and you can positively react to an event or negatively react to an event, and you choose your reaction. And that's the thing. And because I think if you do look hard enough in everything, there is a lesson to be learned. And so there's an opportunity there to just improve on where you are at the moment. So that hopefully you don't make it again. That's the critical thing. Don't keep making the same mistakes. Try and learn from them along the way. No, that's cool. So I'm pulling stuff out here, really, for my own benefit as much as anybody else that might be listening, because I always improve a little when I get some really cool guests on, and I've got a really cool guest on today, so thank you for that.
I appreciate that. It's fun being here.
Let's go for one more. How are we doing for time? Oh yeah, just a smidge over 30 minutes, and that's about the right sort of time, I think, for these sorts of things. Makes them effective, succinct, and stuff. So Jason Yarusi nugget, golden nugget of info, something the world needs to know that we haven't touched on already, just to make it harder.
I like it. So, what's come down in my life is that you have to forecast out what you want and put out there the right energy, because you actually just spoke to it, right? Like, there's two things that we ultimately control, right? What you give and how you react to what's given to you. And usually we'll show up and give something, but then we'll react very poorly. And the hardest thing is that we all want to take action. We want to just go, right? But you even talked to it earlier, like your body was talking to you to take a moment. Sometimes the greatest lessons are found in the pauses. And that's why the importance of having just a moment for yourself in the morning and a clear outtake for what the day ahead, and just closing your eyes, taking a couple deep breaths, just taking a moment to pause from all the chaos, especially like you live in a city or live somewhere where it's just like constant rustle and bustle, and like the moment to just stop the noise and just sit there with yourself so you can become self-aware of how you show up, right? That's most important. I like to think of it if you want to position yourself for greatness, right? You have to, I like to come back to like King Arthur of the Round Table, right? They have all these people that would come around this round table to try and keep peace after a time of war, right? Well, that's our minds. Each day we have to get back and wake up with the same mind. No matter how good or bad the day was before, you have to start over, right? To get your mind ready for the day ahead. And in your mind, you might have happiness, but you might have rage, envy, guilt. You might have, lethargy. You might have bitterness. You might have, apathy. You might have all these different things in your mind. And what you have to do is you have to guard your mind so you can position yourself for greatness, right? So you have to be self-aware that I'm showing up today and I just woke up and I'm angry at my uncle because he just had this opportunity to do something, or I'm mad at my boss because they didn't give me that raise. Or instead of saying, okay, listen, I understand I'm showing up like this, you become cognizant of how you're reacting to those points. So you can choose, okay, maybe my boss didn't give me that point here because unbeknownst to me, maybe there's a better position coming up that he's grooming me for, right? That I can just show up. But if I show up and just come in there tomorrow and I just, railroad that whole event and I'll make it a horrible event, then I won't be set up for that point. So you can react in a way that's meaningful to help carry you forward, to find the lesson. But you have to be self-aware of how you're showing up. I have a friend and he says something that's so interesting. He says, so many times in life, like we can't see the label because we're stuck in the jar. And what he's talking to there is that we can't see how we're showing up because we're stuck inside ourselves, right? And so we're not actually stepping outside of ourselves. But if you can stop and pause and almost pull yourself out and out of body experience, just look at how you're showing up. Are you coming out and someone cuts you off and you're enraged, or, you get there today and you wake up and you stub your toe and you're mad at the couch. You're right. You're just mad. You're taking out your reactions in a horrible way. You have to ask yourself, okay, am I the person that's the person that achieves the goals that I want? Because you're setting goals. You're here listening to the Goals Guy podcast, right? You're setting goals, but to become the goal, to meet the goal, you have to be the person who's meeting that goal. And so if you're not that person today, who is that person that's going to go out there and meet those goals? If it is to build a massive company, run 1,000 miles, meet that perfect someone, like who is that person that does that? Because if you're not showing up as that person today, it's going to be much harder for you to get to the goals. But if you start to enlist the feelings, the reactions, the responses as that person, the goal is not magically going to show up, but you will have a much cleaner path to get there all day long.
Yeah. Okay, so before we bring this to an end, because it's been cool and we could talk all day, but it's coming to the end of my day and probably just the start of yours. Well, no, it won't be the start of yours because you've probably been up 7 or 8 hours already, right? even though it's whatever time it is, wherever it is in Tennessee. Is there something within your message that you like to share with people that we haven't covered?
I'll talk to the 3 foundational blocks of Live 100. So Live 100, it's a journey for you to define yourself so you can go out there and achieve your highest calling. But within that, there's 3 foundational blocks. And I got back to okay, what did I do to start changing the narrative of my life, right? And so I started to set the point is that you have to look at your habits, right? And you have to start breaking your habits and pivoting them to new habits, right? We never get rid of our habits, right? So if you stop drinking coffee, you drink tea, right? If you stop smoking cigarettes, maybe you'll chew gum, right? So you have to pivot it to the right habits. And for that, then you have to intentionally execute to start building momentum with habits that are going to elicit the right behavior to positivity. So you can magnify the results. And so you have break, build, and magnify. And those are the 3 foundational blocks that allow you to live 100 in your life. And within those, though, you have to choose because, we have, as said, now, I haven't counted, but in that fact, 75 to 80,000 thoughts a day could be, that's what you hear. That's what they say. But 75% of them are repeated and negative. So you have to build so much momentum to get past the negativity that just constantly recurs in your day. Just by anything, just by you getting up, you have to start to elicit so much part, right? So I think of a cup, like if I have a cup of clean water and I go just take, black dye and I take one drop of that black dye and I put into that cup of clean water, right? The cup is completely tainted. Now it's all black just from that one little drop, right? That's the positivity being distorted by negativity. But if I take that one drop, right, and I put that in a cup that has nothing in it, and I try to take water, a clean glass that's all over positivity, I have to continue to pour that glass and pour that glass and pour that glass and pour that glass to dilute that negativity. It's just so small. And that's basically how our lives are. It's like we have to make sure we oversupply on abundance and positivity because that little nugget of negativity, it causes havoc. It disrupts your day in a massive fashion. So the more you can understand that it's on you to bring the positivity, you have to do it. You have to do it each day. You have to be, the King Arthur of the round table in your mind each and every day to get the success that you can and will have.
Okay. And the 3 pillars again?
Break, build, and magnify.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect time to bring this episode to a close. Jason, it's been a blast. Thank you very much. There's so much good stuff in there. And I say, I'm going to chop off a few bits and pieces and share it out in the world in little bits. And, if people want to see the full Monty, then they'll have to subscribe to the podcast. So that will be cool. Jason, thank you very, very much for joining me from across the pond. A great day, as I have no doubt you will, because obviously you set it up at 4:32 this morning. And I love that. I'm going to bring my day a little bit earlier, but I'm not ready for 4:32 yet, I don't think, but maybe one day. But thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you, Doug.